Hi everyone, and welcome to Quinn at Home. Today we're going to be doing a little baking. It's my daughter's birthday and she's not really a fan of traditional cake, so we're going to be making a cookie cake instead. So let's go ahead and get started. We begin making our cookie dough by adding in the shortening. Then we begin adding our sugars in whichever order you please. I started with the brown sugar, but whichever order you like is perfectly fine. Now it's time to blend the sugars with the shortening. As they're mixing together, you want to make sure that the shortening completely mixes in with the sugars, and overall, you're just looking for a really creamy consistency with them all blended together seamlessly. I find myself scraping down the blender quite often because I just want to make sure I get everything off and blended in and all my ingredients incorporated well. So now it's time to add the eggs. You're going to add the eggs one at a time, and when you add one egg, you're going to make sure that it's completely blended in with the mix. And then you add the second egg and make sure that's completely blended in before you add the rest of the ingredients. In this next step, we're going to be adding water and vanilla extract. Now, the key in this step, as well as in all of the rest of my baking, is making sure that the vanilla extract is pure. Now, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it always ensures that all of your baking is going to have the best flavor. So, in my opinion, spending that extra money is always worth it. Now we're going to be adding the salt, the baking soda, the baking powder, and the flour, so the last of all of the dry ingredients. After adding in the flour, we can see that the dough pretty much blends pretty seamlessly into what we recognize as cookie dough. So after the dough mixes completely together, we can move on to the next step and add in the chocolate chips. Last but not least, it is finally time to add the chocolate chips. So since the dough is actually already made and blended, we don't need to add the chocolate chips at a super high speed. So at maybe a 2 or so on the blender, we can combine the chocolate chips with the cookie dough. Overall, I try not to blend the cookie dough on too high of speeds just to make sure it stays soft and fluffy and that our cookies are not too tough. Now it's time to spray our 16-inch pizza pan with non-stick cooking spray, and we can go ahead and put down the cookie dough on the pan and spread it out. This is quite a bit of cookie dough, and so overall I'm making the batter about half an inch thick or so, and I'm creating an edge around it so it's a kind of even and uniform, but I'm not pressing it all the way to the edge of the pan because it does expand a little bit. So I'm making it a uniform circle, making my hands create a barrier to make a little bit of an edge around it, and it looks good. The oven is set for 350 degrees for 15 minutes. Ultimately, I ended up baking it for 16 minutes. Now it's time to make the homemade icing. I'll be adding butter, heavy whipping cream, powdered sugar, and again, that pure vanilla extract to make this icing. So starting off, you're going to be whipping together the butter. The key to the butter, however, is making sure that it is softened. So I set the butter out about 2 hours before I begin to make it. So I don't like to do a rush method where I'm putting the butter in the microwave or anything like that, because the butter is the key to making sure the consistency of your icing turns out right. If your butter is melted, too hot, it's going to make your icing too watery and it's just going to be a big mess. So just make sure you take those proper steps to make sure your butter is softened properly. So you're going to start the icing off with whipping your butter alone, and then you're going to add in the powdered sugar. And after you add in your powdered sugar, you're going to blend those ingredients together. After you scrape the bowl and continue to mix the ingredients together, go ahead and add an additional cup of powdered sugar to the mix. Make sure you start the blender off a little bit slower when you initially add in the powdered sugar, because it will literally go everywhere. Here is where we add some heavy whipping cream. This step can vary because we can add more or less based on how thick or thin the icing is or how we want it to be. And of course, adding the vanilla extract for that lovely sweet flavor. So you can see me here adding an additional cup of powdered sugar. This is a recipe I typically make for a larger cake with 6 cups of powdered sugar. So I was trying to make this recipe into a third, and quite simply my math wasn't mathing, y'all, and I did not divide up the recipe correctly. So I should have only had 2 cups of powdered sugar in this recipe, but instead I added 3. But what the good thing is about this is when the icing is too thick, you can always make it thinner. So I just added more heavy whipping cream and made it a little bit thinner. But the thing is, when it's too thin, you can't make it thicker. And that's why the importance is of making sure your butter is at the right consistency. And that's what really will make it too thin, is if your butter is too warm. So make sure your butter's good, you guys, because I've had so many tears over this icing. My husband will tell you. This is what the beautiful, delicious cookie looks like when it comes out the oven. The light from the window makes it look a little lighter and unfinished, but trust me, it was done. Now it's time to dye the icing. So I divided the icing evenly as I could into 3 separate bowls. So we're doing kind of an ombre effect. She likes greens and blues, so we're going to be doing a darker blue, a lighter blue, and a green. So I have these little like cheese cutters that I guess you would do like with a charcuterie board, but I have never made a charcuterie board, so I just use them to dye icing with, basically. So I'm scooping them out and putting a little bit of the dye onto the spoons, and that's how I'll be mixing them up. That was the best use I could find for those cheese cutters. And I love the Wilton gel dyes. They're super pigmented and they're kind of messy, but that's why they're pigmented. But they distribute color really, really evenly, and the colors are absolutely beautiful. Of course, the box gives you a guide for how the colors will be in general, but this was still kind of guesswork. But it's beautiful, y'all. Look. Now it's time to decorate. We just moved, so I could not find my piping bags. So I literally put the icing into sandwich bags and put my little piping ends into the bottom of sandwich bags and piped them through that. It was horrible. The bags kept busting. Do not recommend, literally ever. It was horrible, but I made it through and it worked. So I will, if I can't find my piping bags, I'll just have to buy new ones, which is fine. I'll eventually use them, but don't put them in sandwich bags. It'll be a disaster. So I blended all the colors with the leftover icing to decorate the name on the middle, so it would be kind of a super ombre effect, literally with the colors blended together. Super cute. So I went to spell her name out in the middle because I thought it looks kind of bare with nothing in the middle there. So there we go. This cookie cake was absolutely gigantic. It was delicious, but it was really good for the kids' birthday party because it fed a lot of people. A local pizza shop gave me a box to put it in, so I was super incognito with the cookie cake, bringing it to the party.
Hold it. I thought she was 10. Yes, yes.
Like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you.